Let me tell you something about the girl I used to be. She was not broken. She was not damaged. She was not carrying some deep wound that made her desperate for love. No, she was just full. Let me tell you something about the girl I used to be. She was not broken. She was not damaged. She was not carrying some deep wound that made her desperate for love. No, she was just full of hope, full of warmth, full of this quiet, stubborn belief that if you loved somebody right, if you showed up, if you stayed, if you gave everything you had, that love would come back to you the same way you sent it out. That was me. I grew up in a house full of women who loved hard. My mother, my grandmother, my Aunt Denise. These were not soft women. These were women who worked double shifts and still had dinner on the table. Women who cried in the bathroom so nobody would hear them, then came out and made everybody laugh. They loved with everything they had, and sometimes, most times, the people they loved did not love them back the same way. I watched all of that growing up, and instead of learning to protect myself, I learned to give more. Funny how that works. I was 31 years old when I met him. I had a career I was proud of. I was managing operations for a mid-size hospital, overseeing staff, budgets, patient care coordination. It was not glamorous work, but it was meaningful work, and I was good at it. I had my own apartment. I had my friends. I had Renee, who has been my best friend since the 9th grade and who has never once in her life told me what I wanted to hear, only what I needed to hear. I was not lonely. I want to be clear about that. I was not some woman sitting by a window waiting for a man to complete her. I was complete. I just did not know yet that being complete does not protect you from loving the wrong person completely. It was a charity gala. The hospital I worked for hosted it every year, raising funds for pediatric care. I was the one who organized it. Every table, every flower arrangement, every name card. I had been running around in heels for 6 hours by the time the actual event started. He was a donor. His architectural firm had been contributing to the hospital foundation for a few years. I had seen his name on spreadsheets, but I had never seen his face. And then there he was. Tall, sandy brown hair going a little gray at the sides, the kind of easy confidence that comes from never having had a reason to doubt yourself. He was talking to one of the board members, and he laughed at something, this big, open laugh, and I remember thinking, whoever made him feel that comfortable in a room, they did a good job. He caught me looking. I looked away. Classic. But then he walked over, just walked right over, extended his hand and said, and I remember this exactly, he said, "You're the one who put this whole thing together, aren't you? I can always tell. You have the look of someone who's been holding everything up all night." I laughed, because it was true, and because nobody had ever noticed that before. We talked for 2 hours that night, just talked. About the hospital, about his firm, about the city, about nothing. He was interesting. He asked questions and then actually listened to the answers. He didn't perform. He didn't try too hard. By the end of the night, he asked for my number. I gave it to him. Renee, when I told her, said, and I quote, "A white man from an architectural firm? Layla, baby, are you sure you want that particular headache?" I told him he was different. She gave me the look. You know the look. The one that says, "I love you and I'm going to let you learn this one yourself." He called the next day, not texted, called. He took me to dinner that weekend, a real dinner, not something casual. He picked me up. He opened the door. He was present the entire evening. No phone on the table, no distracted eyes. On our third date, he brought me flowers. Not roses, wildflowers, because I had mentioned once, briefly, in passing, that I thought wildflowers were more honest than roses. He remembered. And I fell. Not fast, I fell the way water fills a room, slowly, quietly, until suddenly you look down and you're already in it. The first year was beautiful. I will not take that away from it or from him. It was genuinely beautiful. We traveled, we cooked together on Sunday mornings, he would come to the hospital galas and stand beside me and look at me like I had built the whole world, not just the event. My coworkers adored him. His friends were mostly warm, mostly welcoming, a little curious maybe in ways that made me feel like a novelty, but I told myself that was just adjustment. That was just people getting used to something new. The first time I met his mother, Carol, she hugged me and said, "Oh, how lovely." That was it. How lovely, like I was a piece of furniture he'd brought home. But she was polite. She was always so polite, and for a long time I confused politeness with acceptance. That was my first mistake. There was a dinner party, maybe 8 months in, at a colleague of his. Big house, nice people mostly, and someone made a comment, something about those neighborhoods and how crime follows certain demographics, and everyone kind of laughed or nodded, and he just reached for his wine glass. He did not say anything. I sat there with a smile on my face that I had to hold like it was a physical object, and after, in the car, I brought it up, gently, because that is how I did things, gently. He said, "Layla, you know how Gary is. He's old school. It wasn't directed at you." I said, "It was directed at people who look like me."
He said, "I just don't want to make every social situation into a conflict." And I heard that. I filed it, and then I let it go because I loved him and he loved me, and I believed that love was bigger than one dinner party comment. That was my second mistake, because here is what I did not understand then. When someone shows you how much your comfort is worth to them, believe them the first time. Not because they are evil, but because that moment is a preview, not an exception. I did not believe it. I chose him instead. I chose us, and I told myself, love is bigger than this. It was the most expensive lie I ever told myself. I need you to understand something. Waiting does not look like sitting by the phone. Waiting does not look like a woman in a movie staring at a door. He said, "I just don't want to make every social situation into a conflict." And I heard that. I filed it, and then I let it go because I loved him and he loved me, and I believed that love was bigger than one dinner party comment. That was my second mistake, because here is what I did not understand then. When someone shows you how much your comfort is worth to them, believe them the first time. Not because they are evil, but because that moment is a preview, not an exception. I did not believe it. I chose him instead. I chose us, and I told myself, love is bigger than this. It was the most expensive lie I ever told myself. I need you to understand something. Waiting does not look like sitting by the phone. Waiting does not look like a woman in a movie staring at a door. Real waiting looks like normal life. It looks like going to work and coming home and cooking dinner and laughing and making plans and living, while somewhere underneath all of it, quietly, like a leak in the wall, something is draining. I waited for 5 years. 5 years for him to say, without any conditions attached, "I want to marry you." He talked about the future, our future, in this comfortable, floating way that never landed anywhere. Whenever I got specific, whenever I said, "Okay, but what does that actually look like? When? How? What are we building?" there was always a reason to stay vague. The firm was going through a transition. He wanted to get his finances in order first. He wasn't sure the timing was right. The timing was never right. I waited for him to have one real conversation with his mother about us, one conversation where he said, "Carol, this woman is my partner, and I need you to treat her like it." It never happened. Instead, what happened was years of holiday dinners where I smiled and passed dishes and answered polite questions and felt every single time like a guest in a life I was supposed to be part of. I waited for him to stop treating my culture like something exotic he had access to. He loved my grandmother's cooking, but got uncomfortable at family gatherings when people got loud and joyful and fully themselves. He loved the idea of me, but sometimes I felt like he loved a quieter, smaller, more convenient version of me, not the full thing. And so, slowly, and I did not even notice it happening, I started becoming that smaller version. I laughed less loudly when his friends were around. I stopped wearing certain things because I did not want to deal with certain reactions. I started explaining myself less because every explanation seemed to exhaust him. I softened my edges. I flattened myself out. I made myself easier to carry. Aunt Denise came to visit in year 4. She flew in from Charlotte, stayed a week, and one morning over coffee, she just looked at me, really looked at me, and she said, "Baby, you've gotten smaller." I laughed. I said, "I've actually lost a few pounds." She shook her head. She said, "That's not what I mean, and you know it." I did know it. I just wasn't ready to say it out loud yet, because saying it out loud would mean I had to do something about it, and doing something about it meant risking losing him. And losing him, even the incomplete version of him, even the half-present, always almost version of him, felt like more loss than I could hold. So I stayed. I told myself, he loves me in his way. He's doing his best. People grow, people change. If I just stay consistent, if I just keep showing up, eventually he will meet me where I am. That is the most painful part of this story. Not what he did, but what I did to myself while I was waiting for him to change.
I stopped speaking up because I was tired of being made to feel dramatic. I stopped asking for what I needed because the asking always cost more than the receiving was worth. I started apologizing for things that were not my fault because it was easier than watching him shut down. I gave that man the best of me, the most patient, most loving, most generous version of me. And he accepted it. He accepted all of it. And he gave me back almost love, almost commitment, almost partnership. Almost is a very expensive place to live. His architectural firm had its 15th anniversary. Big event, catered venue, speeches, all of it. I helped him plan parts of it. I knew the caterer's name, I knew the timeline. I had gone over the guest list with him twice. I wore a deep burgundy dress. I felt good. I felt like his partner. I felt like the woman who had been beside this man through a business expansion, through a difficult year when he lost a major client, through his father's illness, through 5 years of Sunday mornings and hard conversations, and choosing him. We were standing near the entrance, and a business colleague came over, someone he'd been hoping to connect with for a contract. Important guy, apparently. They shook hands, they laughed about something, and then this man looked at me and waited for an introduction. And he said, without blinking, without hesitating, he said, "And this is my friend Layla." Friend. My face did not move. I shook the man's hand. I smiled. I said something pleasant. The conversation moved on. And I stood there, in that burgundy dress, in a room I had helped put together, beside a man I had loved for 5 years, and he was my friend? I stayed for another hour. I spoke to people. I ate something. I was perfectly fine on the outside. He asked if I was okay on the drive home. I said yes. He dropped me at my apartment. I went inside. And then I sat in my car. I had taken my own car, actually, thank God. I sat in the parking garage of my building for 45 minutes. I did not cry. I just sat there. And something in me, something that had been holding on, gripping tight, white-knuckling the dream of this relationship, just let go. Not in an angry way, not in a dramatic way. It was quiet. It was like a door closing very gently in a house that had been slowly emptying for years. I went upstairs. I got a notepad, and I wrote down everything I had given this relationship. Everything. My time, my energy, my growth, my compromises, the trips I didn't take because of his schedule, the opportunities I second-guessed because of where we were, the pieces of myself I quietly set aside to make room for him. Then I wrote down what I had received. The list was not equal. It was not even close to equal. And I looked at those two lists for a long time, and I thought, I am a woman who knows how to manage a hospital budget. I know when something is not sustainable. I know when the numbers do not work. These numbers had not worked for a long time. I just had not wanted to see it. I did not leave loud. I want to say that because people always expect the dramatic exit, the screaming match, the things thrown across the room, the tearful confrontation at the airport. That is not how I left. I left the way I had been arriving, quietly, but this time I was leaving for myself instead of showing up for him. I started pulling my energy back, not dramatically, not cruelly, just honestly. I stopped being the first to call. I stopped rearranging my schedule. I stopped giving my best hours to someone who had given me his leftover ones. I called Renee. I told her everything, including the friend comment. And Renee, God love her, was silent for a full 10 seconds. And then she said, I'm going to need you to say that back to me one more time so I know I heard it right. I told Aunt Denise, too. She did not say, I told you so. She did not need to. She just said, now you can come back to yourself, baby. She's been waiting. He noticed. Of course he noticed. When you have been receiving someone's warmth your whole relationship, you feel the temperature change immediately. He called more. He showed up more. He started doing all the things I had quietly needed him to do for years. And part of me, the part that had loved him so completely, felt the pull of that, felt the temptation to say, see, this is who he can be. Maybe now things will be different. But I had already seen those two lists, and I knew that a man who shows up only when he feels you leaving is not a man who has changed. He is a man who is afraid of losing something comfortable. I was not interested in being someone's comfortable. We had one final conversation. He asked me directly, why are you giving up on us? And I looked at him, this man I had loved genuinely, fully, without holding back, and I said, I'm not giving up on us. I gave up on waiting for you to show up to us. He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. He had no answer, because there was no answer, because deep down, in the part of himself he had never fully examined, he knew it was true. I picked up my bag, I walked to the door, and I left. No slamming, no tears, no final look over my shoulder. Just a woman walking out of a waiting room she should have left years ago. I'm not going to tell you that everything was beautiful after that I healed fast and glowed up immediately and life became perfect. That would be a lie, and I have told myself enough of those. The first few months were hard. I missed him, not the relationship I deserved, but the relationship I had. The Sunday mornings, the inside jokes, the familiarity of knowing someone and being known, even if you were only known partially. Grief does not care how right your decision was. It shows up anyway. But here's what else showed up. Me. The real me, the one who laughed aloud at family gatherings without measuring the volume first, the one who wore what she wanted and took up the space she deserved, the one who went back to Aunt Denise for a long weekend and sat on that porch and breathed and remembered who she was before she started making herself smaller. I stopped apologizing for my needs. I started saying out loud what I wanted, in my career, in my friendships, in every room I walked into. I went back to things I had quietly set aside. I took a trip I had postponed twice. I started saying no without a paragraph of explanation attached to it. And slowly, not overnight, not magically, but steadily, I came back to myself. I think about that girl I described at the beginning, the one who was full of hope, full of warmth, full of that stubborn belief in love. She is still here. She did not disappear. But she is wiser now. She knows that love is not just about how much you can give. It is about finding someone who receives what you give with the same care that you gave it. Someone who sees you, all of you, your culture, your history, your loudness, your softness, your ambition, your gentleness, and says, yes, all of it. I'm not going anywhere. She knows now that waiting is only a beautiful thing when two people are waiting together, both moving towards something real, both willing to be uncomfortable, both willing to grow. She knows that a Black woman's love is not a resource to be extracted. It is a gift, and gifts deserve to be received with gratitude, not taken for granted. She knows that the moment she stopped waiting for him was not the moment she gave up on love. It was the moment she finally chose to love herself with the same devotion she had spent 6 years pouring into someone else. And that right there was not an ending. That was the beginning of everything that actually mattered. If you are listening to this and you recognize yourself in any part of this story, if you have been waiting in a room where the other person keeps not showing up, I need you to hear me. You are not too much. You are not too needy. You are not dramatic. You are not hard to love. You are someone who deserves the full thing, not the almost, not the maybe, not the one day when the timing is right. The full thing, right now, as you are. And sometimes the most powerful thing you will ever do is pick up your bag, walk to the door, and choose yourself. Even if your hands are shaking when you do it. Even if you cry the whole drive home. You choose yourself anyway, because you, my love, you were never the one who needed to wait. He was.